Now, the entertainment world is like evolving just like everything else. Technology is really kind of shifting us fast forward. What got you interested in creating these characters and these creatures that come to life?
So what interested me in that as a young person, I was always interested in things that are that looked realistic or things that...
And I know you spent some time in taxidermy, kind of messed around with that when you were in Louisiana, correct?
Yes. Someone who worked for my dad actually did taxidermy as a hobby, and I was probably about 7 or 8, and he showed me how to mount this little crawfish. It was the first thing I ever did, and then he had some...
You worked with somebody like a legendary person. It was Dick Smith.
So I booked a flight to Los Angeles. I met a bunch of people. I had a little portfolio full of some makeups and sculptures that I did, but Dick Smith was there. Dick Smith is a famous, legendary makeup artist. He did the makeup for The Exorcist. He did, Little Reagan's demonic makeup. He did The Godfather.
When you think about characters, you've worked, it's been Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds, Stephen King's Nightmare and Dreamscapes, and The Legend of the Guardians. What are some of the ones that really stand out to you that you just really enjoyed it,
So we just did, we worked on Epic Universe, which is Universal's new theme park in Orlando, and that's amazing. It's got Harry Potter Land, it's got Monsters Land, it's got Nintendo Land, it's got How to Train Your Dragon, and we did things for all of those. We did 22 different.
Welcome to Gold Media. I'm Melissa Bell. Today joining me is Lee Romaire. He is an Emmy Award-winning creative producer and the founder of Romaire Studios. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Melissa.
Now, the entertainment world is like evolving just like everything else. Technology is really kind of shifting us fast forward. Things are, like when you look at like animation and stuff, it's amazing where we came from back even 10 years ago.
Right.
What got you interested? I mean, you've been working with some of the top, entertainment companies, Disney, Universal, Creative, and, just like a secret weapon for these people, creating these characters and these creatures that come to life. What got you started in this?
So the things that I create are actually live based. They're not animation, or they're animated, but they're either mechanical or they're puppets or they're in the past makeups. So what interested me in that as a young person, I was always interested in things that are that looked realistic or things that like if you go to Disneyland, you go on the Jungle Cruise and there's a hippo that looks real, or even rocks or fake trees. I was always fascinated with seeing things like that when you go to museums or any kind of artificial environment. I was always interested in that type of thing. Also, back in the day when I was younger, all those special effects were in movies were practical, like, the people in makeups, or they were people in a monster suit, or, animated by stop motion. So I loved all that kind of thing. And eventually I was able to get into the business.
And I know you spent some time in taxidermy, kind of messed around with that when you were in Louisiana, correct?
Yes. So I grew up in Louisiana, and speaking of things that look realistic, Morgan City is where I'm from, and it's a very small town that's very close to the Gulf of Mexico. So it's called, Louisiana's called the Sportsman's Paradise because there's so much hunting and fishing that goes on there, and all these people had ducks and deer and fish on their walls. And so, that was kind of the first thing that had exposure to, and I was fascinated with it. Someone who worked for my dad actually did taxidermy as a hobby, and I was probably about 7 or 8, and he showed me how to. I mounted this little crawfish. That was the first thing I ever did, and then he had a course, and he gave me some books, that showed you how to do taxidermy. So I took it and I studied them and I read them, and I actually, started actually doing it for people, and people would come to me in the neighborhood and they would, hire me to mount a duck that they had shot and this and that. So I was like the, young taxidermist, like Norman Bates. Um, and, I did that probably until, I was in college at some point where I stopped that. But, it was what that gave me was a sense of how um, anatomy worked and how fur and feathers and all those things worked, and that came in handy later. Creating the things that we do now.
And putting those pieces together. And now then you had, you worked with somebody like a legendary person in Los Angeles, or was it Los Angeles when you worked with, it was Dick Smith.
So to back up a little bit, I went to college and I studied advertising, and I graduated, and I guess about, I was about 10 years in when I decided that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of get back to things that I really liked as a kid. So I quit advertising, and I decided just out of the blue that I was going to be a special effects makeup artist. And everybody thought I was crazy, but I was living in New Orleans, and I stopped advertising. I started working for Mardi Gras companies to kind of learn how to sculpt. Um, I but soon after I decided that I wanted to pursue makeup, I saw a magazine called Makeup Artist Magazine, and I opened it, and they had a makeup artist convention, um, probably a couple months later. So I booked a flight to Los Angeles. I met a bunch of people. I had a little portfolio full of some makeups and sculptures that I did, but Dick Smith was there. Dick Smith is a famous, legendary makeup artist. He did the makeup for The Exorcist. He did, Little Reagan's demonic makeup. He did The Godfather, which was Marlon Brando, famous Marlon Brando makeup, and amongst many others. And he was, teaching people at that point. He was taking people under their wing and teaching them how to do makeup. And he thought that I had a bit of talent, and he, said, you could take my course and develop. And over the next year and a half to 2 years, I worked really closely with him, long distance. He was in Connecticut, and I was or actually he was in Florida at that point, and then he moved back to Connecticut. But back and forth, and we didn't have the internet, so I would, work on these things, and I would take pictures of it, and I would develop the pictures and put them in an envelope and send it to him, and then he would call me and he would critique it, and then we would just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth like that for, about a year and a half, and then at that point I was ready to go to Hollywood, to Los Angeles, to try to find work. And he, as an amazing makeup artist he was an even better teacher and mentor, and really taught me a lot about life and everything. So I'm really honored to get to know him and work with him.
Yeah, there's those people that make a lasting impression and kind of either propel you on or make you, like, you know what I mean, question, or yeah, either question what you're doing. You're like, I know this is what I want and this is what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I was kind of, but vacillating back and forth, or, can I go? Can I do it? And he said, you've got the bug now. You don't have a choice. You have to do it. So I was like, you're right. I just need to jump and do it. And I'm, like I said, I'm probably the least talented person that he ever mentored. I mean, many people in Hollywood he has mentored and helped, including, Guillermo del Toro was one of his young students who helped him, and there's many others as well. I'm trying to think of another big name, but many Oscar winners as well. He left a lasting legacy, for people,
in the
for sure.
industry.
Yeah.
And now, when you think about characters, you've worked, it's been Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds, Stephen King's Nightmare and Dreamscapes, and The Legend of the Guardians. What are some of the ones that really stand out to you that you just really enjoyed it?
So there's two phases. One is when I was working for other studios, and I worked on some really cool stuff. Scooby-Doo was a really fun. I got to sculpt some of the characters in that. I got to work on a movie called White Chicks, which was fun. I got to work with Greg Canham, who was a really amazing makeup artist. He passed away recently. I got to work on Angel and Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, for another studio. There's a lot of things that I worked on. Some of the movies that I worked on, I haven't even seen. I just because the work was what was interesting to me, not necessarily the movie. You'll find that if you work on movies, there may be two or three or one that you are proud of, and then the rest of them kind of just, not that great. But two movie projects that am proud of was when I started my own studio. One was Cats and Dogs, too. A good friend of mine, Dave Barkley, who's an amazing puppeteer, and he's also a builder, which is in Hollywood is kind of rare for a puppeteer to also be able to build puppets and animate them. And he was just a genius, or is a genius at it. He became animatronic supervisor of this movie, and he wanted my studio to build the puppets. So that was a big honor to be able to build all these cats and dogs, and I got to design some of the crazier looking cats and dogs in the movie, and we had a good little team working here and in Canada, and so that was a really cool project to work on, to be able to work with him. And then also I got to do some really cool stuff for Brian Henson, he owns the Jim Henson Company. Jim Henson was his dad. He was asked to direct part of Stephen King's Nightmares and Dreamscapes, like the Battleground episode. So he asked me to do the makeups for that, and we also did the suits for the little soldiers. The story is about a hitman who kills a toy executive, and as retribution, I forget who sends him a box of toys, and then the toys end up fighting him, and they're little toy soldiers, and it's a really cool episode because it's William Hurt who plays the hitman, and he is in this penthouse, and all these toy soldiers fight him, and there's no dialogue in the entire thing. It's all just action. So we made the toy soldier suits, and we filmed actors on a green screen and shrunk them down really small. The lead toy was called the Savage Commando, and that was played by a guy named Bill Beretta, who is other famously known as as puppeteering Pepe the Prawn and a bunch of other Henson Muppets. He's a famous Muppeteer, and so that was a lot of fun to work on. And Brian could have easily used his own creature shop to do that work, but he trusted me to do it. So really, we're proud of that, and it was a great experience to watch him work.
And those that takes a while. Like, how long would like something like that particular movie? Like, how long does it take to make these creations and to
Oh,
do?
it's not long; it's fast.
Okay.
You have 6 to 8 weeks to get it all
Wow.
done. So yeah, it's a lot of. At the beginning, it was when I first started in Hollywood. I started working on movies. Sorry, flies flying around here. Started working in movies, and you have more time to work on movies. Sometimes you have, weeks and weeks to do one sculpture for a makeup. Um, that's all changed, and, the pace has picked up, and it's all gotten to be sort of a TV pace. So I remember the first interview I had at a company that did TV work, and it was like, oh, that fly's gonna, um, I walked in and they were working on this huge insect creature suit. And I said, well, how long do you have to do that to sculpt that suit? And, I was thinking like, okay, he probably has like a month or 2 months, but it was like, we have 3 days to do this. So I was like, wow, I can't do that. But then, when the movie work dried up and I had to go work at that place, then I suddenly learned how to do things very fast, and you just got handed like, this is episode whatever of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Boom, you have a day to sculpt this character, this mutant rat makeup, and so I did it. Then the next thing comes to your desk for this next episode of, whatever. So it's a much faster pace, but it was fun because you just got to try things and throw it out. And you didn't have time to refine things too much, and that was a really great experience.
And
Now,
now,
as opposed to what I'm working on now, which is these type of mechanical engineered characters for theme parks, this takes years to do. So it's a very different world.
that's interesting to find out because, like films, you think about it takes sometimes like a year. Well, I guess TV's different, but films could take up to a year and a half, 2 years to finish. But they're rolling every day, like doing sequences and shoots. So that makes sense. But when you're doing like a project like your Universal Studios or something like that, you're saying so it takes like years. Like, what was like probably the most difficult one recently when it comes to more of like a amusement
Well,
park?
yeah. So we just did that. We worked on Epic Universe, which is Universal's new theme park in Orlando, and that's a 5 or 6 year project where they have to, they're building a new park. It's the first park that's built in Orlando in 25 years. And they had, it's amazing. It's got Harry Potter land, it's got Monsters land, it's got Nintendo land, it's got How to Train Your Dragon, and we did things for all of those. We did 22 different characters and character props for that land, and we started, for example, we started on it before COVID, like right before COVID, we had actually started on that work, and then COVID hit. That work completely, everything shut down, obviously. So all of that work went away, and then it came back. Probably less than a year later, it came back, and we started working on it again. But we just finished it. Was it the beginning of this year? The park just opened in May. So, we were working on it up until then. So we've been working on that for years. And that was a tough job because it's like some of the things we did were super sophisticated. In terms of packaging, very small, some of the most sophisticated things that Universal Studios has ever done. They're famous for building big dinosaurs and King Kong and things like that, but we kind of specialize in the smaller things. So it was tough, but we did it, and the work, people are loving it right now. So we're very proud
And you
of
were
the stuff
mentioning
we did.
too that when it comes to something like that, you're up close to it, so you have to. I'm sure it has to be made to last longer. You have more detail involved. Is it more difficult to do something that like people are going to be right up next to it?
So when I started my studio, I was, thinking that I was going to be going into movie work and TV work and all that. Then I did that for a little while, but I got a call from a friend who worked at Disney Imagineering, and they were working on the first electric head. Like all of the animatronic figures up to that point had been hydraulic or pneumatic, and they wanted to move to electric. So I was part of that process, and developing that from a aesthetic standpoint. These days, like everything is a little bit closer from the audience. So I saw a need for that. I saw a need for us to take that detail and that quality of work that are in the movies and bring it back to the theme park. Like the theme park started essentially from movie studios. Like Walt Disney had a movie studio, and then he did theme parks. So he pulled all those people from the movie studio into making that. It just kind of I think it got away from that for a while. And I just saw a need for it to bring it back. So we were kind of the first people to really bring that highly detailed cinematic kind of quality to the theme park figures. And then from there, you know, from there it's the mechanical aspect. I knew all these people who did animatronics, and I loved the mechanical stuff. So I wanted to do the whole figure, and that's the second bit of our success is that we brought like the movement, the puppeteering back into it. And then the third aspect was the engineering, because this stuff has to last for 25 years. This continuous running all day long. In movie business, you know, the puppets that you see are the animatronic creatures, like the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. The mechanical ones, those have to last for the movie shoot, which is a month or whatever. And these things that you see in a theme park have to last for years and years and years. So that was the third aspect, was getting a dedicated engineering staff put together to really engineer these clever devices to last for a long time. So yes, so the level of difficulty went way up. The level of you know, care and the level of time to put this stuff together went up. So yes, and so it is more difficult for sure, and it's, you know, not a lot of people want to venture into it.
Well, that's what you're making a name. And what distinguishes your company from other special effects or animatronic studios out there?
Well, I would think there's probably a handful of companies throughout the world. You could, you know, count on one hand that can do what we do, and I think it's the combination of the visual aesthetics that we're good at, and combine, and also the performance combined with the engineering durability. So there are companies out there who can, you know, make something look great, but they can't engineer it to last. They have a hard time with that. And then there's companies that are great at engineering, but they cannot. They have to hire somebody else to help with their visual aesthetics, and, you know, the skins and the hair and stuff like that. So we do both, and I think we also super clever. We're one of our specialties is research and development, and we've, you know, just developed a lot of innovative approaches to things that have been, you know, we've got many patents under our name on that type of thing. So that's what distinguishes us. We're kind of all in one stop shop.
And now, where do you think things are going to go for the future? Like, what's your goals for the future? Where you want to take your business?
I'd like to continue to develop what we have, you know, developing these really specialized characters. A lot of what the theme park companies and entertainment companies are doing now are they're focusing on autonomous robotic characters walking around, and eventually AI will get involved in that as well, where they're actually going to communicate with the guest. So, you know, we've been involved with those type of free roaming characters for a long time now. And it's kind of, I can't really go into specific details, which ones we've done or which ones we've worked on, because, you know, we have to follow these NDAs, but, you know, we've done a lot of that already. And I think that's just going to continue. And, personally for us, so that's one thing. And then another thing is, I think I would like to take us in a direction of developing our own IP characters and our own entertainment or experiences. So, and you know what that means, I don't know yet. I'm developing it right now, but we've just done so much for other companies, and you know, that, yes, we build it once, but they get a long-term benefit. So I would like to see us, you know, develop something that we actually own, and we develop, we benefit from the long-term success of it.
That'd be great. That, yep,
All right.
sounds good. Well, I appreciate
Okay.
you joining us, and I know it's hard. I know you're like, what? Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate you joining us, and definitely like would love to have you back and see what you've got going on down the road.
Okay. All right. Thank you for having me. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.